All right, thanks for staying with us. Let's get into our next discussion now. Organized Labour says it will go ahead with its planned strike beginning from Tuesday, November the 6th, that's tomorrow, as negotiations begin between it, the federal government and state governors fail to reach a positive conclusion.
Yes, and Labour on Sunday shunned a reconciliation meeting called by the federal government over the national minimum wage. Labour and Employment Minister Chris Ngige, Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed and representatives of organized private sector arrived at the meeting in good time. But Labour leaders said they won't be a part of it. The tripartite committee is to submit its report to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation at another meeting today, Monday.
Yeah, Labour says it will be a part of that meeting and sign the documents that reflect earlier agreement reached by the committee before opposition from the federal government and state governors. All right, we have with us the presidential candidate, Providence People's Congress, Victor Khai, is with us in the studio. Good morning, Victor.
Good morning, and
nice
thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we also have joining us from Abuja is one of the Labour leaders, Joseph Ndirang. He also chairs the Labour Party in the FCT. It's good to have you join us, Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, let's begin from the studio maybe. Victor, I know you've been following what's going on when it comes to the minimum wage, the disagreements, the seeming disagreements between the tripartite stakeholders in this committee. The other thing there is Nigerians are the ones who are standing aloof and looking at what is really going on, and they said that somewhere along the mix, someone, one or two, or maybe even the three members of that tripartite committee, there's no sincerity somewhere there. What do you see?
Well, obviously, we have seen the kind of government that we've been running all of this while. You'll find a situation where we have what I consider, if you've seen the what you call it now, if you look at the Israeli flag, you will see two inverted pyramids. There's one with the tip at the top and the bottom wide, and there's another wide and at the bottom small. Now, the thing is, that's the way Nigeria is. The minority at the top of that pyramid control the majority of the wealth, you know, and right at the bottom where you have the majority of people, you have the least amount of money available, okay? That's a warped situation we found ourselves in this country.
But unfortunately, that's not that is not what the Israeli flag tries to depict, is it?
No, that's not what it is. I just wanted to pull something that you know would illustrate. I mean, I could have just described it this and then this. Yeah. So that's clear. So we find a situation where political office holders and people in government and even politicians, I mean, business, like for instance, we heard recently that only about barely over 200 pay over 20 million naira in their tax every year, and they make so much money. Security vote unaccounted for. There's so much money available, but very little trickles down. And so you find when we have issues like people stealing money, you know, and hiding it, and then we're covering it, the level of corruption has made it such that there's no accountability. And so Labour is demanding and saying that on behalf of Nigerians, I mean, because it's not fair that so little number of people are controlling such vast amount of wealth. This thing should trickle down. That's the only way. Any country that does not have a thriving middle class is a very poor country. And so there's a need to make the middle class stronger. When you have the very rich and the very poor, then you're a very poor nation.
Two extremes.
Yes.
All right, let's bring in Joseph Ndirang of the NLC FCT chapter. Good morning once again. Now, the NLC, Organized Labour, has refused to have this meeting with the federal government. Exactly why? Is it that you really don't want to move forward with this labor crisis? Joseph Ndirang, if you heard my question.
Yes, I heard your question. It is unfortunate that Nigeria could find itself in this very precarious situation. I want to say that government has no business in allowing the situation to degenerate to the point it has degenerated. You see, when government resort to using cheap political blackmail, intimidation of Nigerian workers and their labor, organized labor, what you will have at the end of the day is total breakdown of law and order. And I want to say that it is unfortunate that yesterday, Labour deliberately skipped itself out of the meeting because government has decided now to use intimidation by bringing in the issue of what I will call just an injunction that was a blackmail injunction, a black market injunction that was received by government in order to intimidate labor. You don't intimidate your opponent when it comes to negotiation. And you cannot negotiate outside negotiation. Already,
of course, you're talking about
the tripartite committee has already agreed that it is 30,000.
You're talking about the court injunction, right? That says you should not go ahead with the strike. Just to clarify.
Yes, Labour is used to those court injunctions. Because they are black market injunctions. They are employed just to intimidate labor. And we are not intimidated by such blackmails. They are cheap blackmails.
All right, now, but let me stay with you, Joseph. From the meeting yesterday, even if the government had, if I have to use your word, intimidate or blackmail the labor unions, as the case may be, but not attending the meeting, wouldn't that be preempting a meeting that hasn't even held, where you don't know actually what can be discussed? Maybe even the real agreements could have been reached as of yesterday.
No, but what is going to be reached at that meeting is very clear. Because we cannot, like I said earlier, you cannot be negotiating outside negotiation. Now, that meeting is not the tripartite committee. The tripartite committee was formed by Mr. President. And the tripartite committee have concluded their job. Their responsibility is to pass the buck to the president. But the Minister of Labour decided to hold it on his table for a reason best known to him. He has refused to transmit it to the president for further transmission to the National Assembly for deliberations upon it. And I want to say that whatever happens, we should hold the Minister of Labour responsible. Because there is one person that has not been brought into this matter. And I wonder why. The chairperson of the tripartite committee, Mrs. Peppel, Ama Peppel. Why don't we reach her? Why can't government reach her and know exactly what happened at the tripartite meeting? And the 30,000 naira was not Labour's figure. And 30,000 naira is not realistic. But Labour accepted it in the interest of peace and tranquility in our country. So now that they have resorted to intimidation, Labour felt that, well, we cannot be entering into negotiation after negotiation. So, but in today's meeting, the tendency is that the leaders will attend to hear what they have to say. But nobody can divide Labour on this particular matter of minimum wage. As far as Labour is concerned, the United Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, and the Nigerian Labour Congress, they are united as a front to face the reality of the situation. And I want to say that the rate at which the present administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, is drifting away, its popularity is alarmingly attending an unprecedented dimension. It is unprecedented. The masses are looking at what is happening. People are tired. People are hungry. There is killing in the land. The government has no reason to have allowed this thing to continue. And I want to say that in fairness to Mr. President of the country, he has made a statement sometimes. He said, how is it that governors who don't pay salary sleep in their homes? That shows the kind of mind he had. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So it means that Mr. President is ready even to pay the 30,000. But it is the people around him that are telling him that all is well when all is not well. My candid advice is that government should not allow this strike to go on. Mr. President saw 3 governors from the Southwest this morning. Let him grant audience to labor leaders. Let him have a face-to-face interaction with labor leaders. and forget about those technocrats that are telling him that all things are in order.
Okay.
And then let them agree on the 30,000 naira and give the Nigerian workers their due.
All right, let's bring it to Victor Hai.
Yes.
I'm sure you listened to some of the things he said there.
Yes, yes.
He actually has no doubt that Mr. President is sincere when it comes to, this 30,000 for, that the NLC is asking for. But the governors and some of the other people around the president don't seem to be on the same page with the president. That's one issue that he raised. I wonder if you have something to say about that. And this court injunction, I mean, he sees it as an intimidation on the part of federal government, of Labour.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the court injunction, and then I'll come down to the issue of the 30,000. This has been the tactics. I mean, it is statutory that after a couple of years, you have to review the minimum wage.
Standard.
So, and if the tripartite committee has already agreed, this is one battle that I'm sure Labour is going to win. There's no backing down, and I don't think that they're going to look for a middle ground, which is probably the game that government is trying to play. And I think Nigerians deserve more. For me, I think also that we're majoring on the minor. Why do I say we're majoring on the minor? 30,000. It seems like a big figure right now, or like, I mean, if you reduce that to dollars, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
When I say we're majoring on the minor, truth is, any amount, if the economy is right, if the economy is fixed, any amount will be adequate, for us to use. I want to just illustrate something here, just to be able to.
Go ahead.
If I said to you, have you ever seen $1 billion in your life, what would your answer be?
There'll be a capital no.
What if
I've never seen $1 billion
what if I offered
in
you,
one place.
What if I offered you a minimum wage of $1 billion a month?
$1 billion?
Well, if we're talking about US dollars.
Well, here's something. I want to show you something. Look here.
All right.
I'll put it here for the purpose of the camera, and then you're going to see
I hope
that.
our camera can, capture that.
What you see here is $50 billion.
Is that supposed to be from Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwean dollars. Just so you see, this is 20 billion.
Okay.
There's more.
Okay.
Now,
okay, for the record, I have 20 billion in my account.
Well, this
what
is
kind of
no, it's in
assurance
your
is
hands,
that?
not in your account yet. It's in your hands.
This is 50 billion. I hope the camera can capture it. This is $50 billion. But here's the shocking part. I also have $1 Zimbabwean here. And I also have $20 Zimbabwean. Zim dollars.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? It means that once upon a time, $1 could buy something.
Absolutely.
Where today, $50 billion cannot buy a loaf of bread. That is a failure of the system. And what does that mean? If we fix our public hospitals, you wouldn't need to spend money for private hospitals that much. Your salary would take you home.
Yeah.
If we fix our public schools, we have no business with private schools. If we fix our roads and other infrastructure, costs will reduce. And so $1 will actually take you home where $50 billion will not. Now that is the dilemma, that's the problem of the Nigerian situation today. We are majoring on the minor. It's not about how much you can pay $50 billion minimum wage today. If you don't fix the economy, if you don't fix hospitals, if you don't fix your educational system, if you don't fix infrastructure, whatever money you make will not be able, no matter how much you're giving, it might not buy you a loaf of bread.
So in other words, what you think is that the NLC, the organized labor, may be getting it wrong in insisting on a higher minimum wage instead of fighting for these things that you have just talked about?
Not necessarily, because workers have to survive. It's a failure of the system. Okay? Because
overtime.
Right now, yes, nothing, overtime, yes, nothing is working. So people, there's poverty in the land.
All right,
and so we need to fix our public institutions, our hospitals, our schools. We need to fix our infrastructure so that whatever you take home can actually take you home.
All right, let's take it from there to Joseph on this same issue, because we've had analysts on this who have talked about the fact that if the economy is not fixed, infrastructure is not fixed, and all of those indices are not fixed, even 70,000, 50,000 will still not take the Nigerian worker home. Joseph, I know you've been listening to the discussion in the studio. A lot of people still feel that 30,000, even if government and all the governors and everyone decides to pay 30,000, but with the inflation rate, with the state of the economy and all of that, it's still not going to mean so much to the Nigerian worker.
Now, the truth of the matter is we are talking about the purchasing capacity of even the 30,000 naira. What 30,000 naira can fetch for you in Nigeria. Now, 30,000 naira that we're even talking about is a palsy 49, is a palsy $98 that we are talking of. But if you look at the statistics in other countries of the nation, Zimbabwe pays $104 as minimum wage. Brazil pays $324 million as minimum wage. And if you go to Cote d'Ivoire whose economy cannot measure with Nigeria, they are paying $155 as minimum wage. Not to talk of countries like Australia, who are paying $2,297 as minimum wage per month.
Yeah.
So, but even the 30,000 naira, like I rightly pointed out, we have to put the chips on the table for the common people to understand, was not the figure of labor. Labor's figure, after research and studies, we discovered that 66,500 naira will be ideal for a Nigerian worker to carry home. But then, it was as a result of having a midway that the organized labor accepted the 30,000. So 30,000 naira cannot buy you anything. Like I said last week, 30,000 naira is just 1,000 naira per day for a worker. And the Nigerian Constitution recognizes a man, a wife, and 4 children, making 6 people. Sending someone home with 1,000 naira to feed 6 people, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is it possible? So that to tell you that even the 30,000 naira is not adequate. But Labour is saying that let us, when we get to the bridge, we will cross it. Just give us the 30,000 naira. And it has already been agreed by the tripartite committee. I still maintain, I still repeat, wherever Ama People is, the chairman of the tripartite committee, wherever she is, please call her, let us find out what transpired in the committee. Was there no an agreement that 30,000 naira was the acceptable figure? Why are they hiding things? Why is government hiding things and resorting to threat? So
Joseph Ndiran,
let me place everything on the table.
Let me stay with you. I want to believe that you were part of that tripartite committee meeting. Are you able to shed some light on some of the high points or the details of that meeting, the outcome of whatever decisions that were reached there?
Well, it is very clear that the tripartite committee is made up of government, is made up of labor, and is made up of the organized private sector. Now, to cut a long story short, after due consideration, memoranda were received from 21 states of the Federation. And I have it here on good record that there are states that said they were ready to pay. States like, let me give you an example. Plateau said they are ready to pay the 30,000 naira. Abia said they were going to pay 42,000 naira. Jigawa said they were going to pay 32,000 naira. Okay, Nasarawa said they will be able to pay 31,000 naira. And then Enugu said whatever is agreed, they are ready to pay. And most of the states said that whatever is agreed, they are going to pay. So along the line, memoranda were received from 21 states. And then they were also received from the organized private sector. They were also received from some agencies of government. And all these were brought together and consideration was made. And then they arrived at the 30,000. And Labour said, well, in the interest of peace and tranquility in our country, looking at the economy, the ailing economy of Nigeria, let us not compound the problem. Let's accept the 30,000. Let's start from there. Because by 2020, we are supposed to go into another negotiation for another new minimum wage. So Labour, being an understanding body, accepted the 30,000 naira. And they were at the verge of signing all the documents, only for the minister to now go to the air and say that the meeting has been adjourned sine die. Adjourning the meeting, saying that was the beginning of the crisis. And you see arrogance in the way and manner the things were handled.
Yeah,
so
Joseph,
we have to be careful in this country.
Yeah, Joseph, please, let's, because the information you just gave out now, I want us to be able to handle it properly so we can understand. Now, some of the states have agreed to pay, because you've named about 4 or 5 states who agreed to pay
above
even something
30.
Above 30,000. So at what point, because from the stories and the reports we're hearing, the governors are saying what they can pay and have the capacity to pay is 22,500. So which states are saying they can't go beyond 22,500, and how come the others are not voicing out to say, no, I said I'm going to pay 30,000, or no, I said I'm going to pay 42,000?
Let me tell you, that is the hypocrisy of our government. That is the hypocrisy of the governors themselves. You see, they have formed themselves into emperors. And let me tell you, I overheard the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress made it clear. He said that all they do is that they come to hide under the canopy of Governors Forum, and when they go back to now bring out any figure they like, and then they go back to their states and say whatever it is accepted, they will pay. And then he now said, Comrade Ayuba Waba said, let every governor go back to his state and then gather his workers and tell them he cannot pay, and let's see whether he will come back to power. You see, the truth of the matter is that these people know the jumbo salary they have for themselves. And then they have forgotten that we, the Nigerian workers, know everything in governance. We are the people carrying the file. We are the people writing the vouchers. We are the people even purchasing what they eat. So there is nothing that is hidden in government. And we know that they have the capacity to pay. So the issue of not having capacity does not arise. Because the Nigerian workers are privy to what is happening in the act of governance. So it is just hypocrisy that people will go back to their states and say, I can pay. And then they come to Abuja under the canopy of Governors Forum, which is not recognized by law. And they continue to say that they will pay 22,000 naira.
All right.
The Governors Forum is not a tripartite committee.
Okay.
The tripartite committee has finished their work.
Yeah.
They were inaugurated by Mr. President. They are supposed to report back to Mr. President.
Okay.
That is just the procedure. There is no tripartite. There is no any other meeting.
All right, Victor Okai, you are a presidential candidate. Yeah. I just heard somebody whisper there from the control room. Okay, since he's a presidential candidate, if he had the opportunity, what would be a realistic figure that he would, think that a Nigerian worker actually deserves? I mean, we had Showore and Kingsley Mogalu here. Where they actually disagreed on, on the figure. But really, that's not really the question that I want to ask. He's saying that the problem is really not about the lack of capacity to pay. According to him, from the list he reeled out there, some state governors are willing to pay, above 30,000, and some are even willing to pay as high as 42. Not that 42,000 is high anyway, in the absence of infrastructure and all of the other things that we talked about earlier. So what exactly, I still want you to give us an idea of what you think would be the ideal minimum wage for the Nigerian worker, and some of the issues he raised, there about capacity and the willingness.
Capacity, the answer is yes. There's a capacity to pay. The bane of this whole system is corruption. Okay, you find governors, local government, or the executive having some of them as many as 200 PAs or special assistants who have no business. Okay, over-bloated contracts and all of that. The amount of wastage in the system, he pointed it out quite rightly. There's so much wastage in the system, so much stealing, let's call it by its name, not just corruption. There's so much stealing. And if this is plugged, quite frankly, I believe in my heart that a Nigerian can comfortably go home with, at a minimum, $100. $300, which is about 100,000 naira. If we were to do things the way we should, because there's a lot of money in this country. And remember, it's not just about government. Government can only take so much. But if the people are empowered, and for me, and the emphasis is this, it's not so much what a man takes home, is what that his take home can actually take home.
The value of what
the
is taking
value.
home.
So my emphasis and my priority would be getting value for anybody. Why would you take your children to a private school and pay so much out of the little you earn when you can have good public schools? Most of us went to public schools. And the education was
the
quite
story
good.
in Rwanda is changing.
It's changing. Okay?
Public schools,
exactly.
private schools are closing down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Private hospitals, we should have no business with private hospitals.
All right, let me bring in Joseph before we leave in here. Legal icon Femi Falana was talking about this issue, and he said that it's even wrong in the first place to even consult state governors when it comes to minimum wage, because originally minimum wage is on the exclusive legislative list, and it should be the prerogative of the federal government to decide on behalf of the country. What do you have to say about this, Joseph?
Femi Falana is an embodiment of law itself. We have high premium respect for him in the labor movement, in the organized labor. When Femi Falana speaks, the law speaks. You know, the truth of the matter is that, as far as we are concerned, that is why we said all these meetings they are calling is unnecessary. It is the government that has to decide. Except for the executive recklessness that we have, otherwise, the right thing to do is to receive the report from the tripartite committee and just hand it over to the National Assembly for further deliberations. And we know that the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Reps, they are labor-friendly guys. And we are sure that they will speedily, conclude negotiations, conclude whatever they want to do about it. And if they might even part the 30,000 so that they make it to 35,000 because it is their responsibility.
Now you would support budget
Let me use this opportunity to warn.
Yes.
Sorry, let me just say this. That
Go ahead.
the strike, I'm afraid, is going to be total. Government should do all they can in order to stop the strike.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
That is my advice to the government. Otherwise, it will have a devastating consequence on the economy,
All right.
on the integrity of the present government.
All right, it's a good place to leave it now. Joseph Ndirang, Labour leader and also the FCT chairman of the Labour Party. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
And of course, Victor Hai, presidential candidate of the Providence People's Congress. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
And thanks for bringing over $1 trillion into
Yes.
the studio.
I mean, it's the first time we're seeing such humongous amount of money.
All right, coming up on the program.